the live stream. So
Right.
welcome everyone.
I love that we have 3 speakers today, by the way. This is exciting. This is a lot more to juggle, but it's gonna be fun.
Absolutely.
3 times the fun, right?
That's right.
And that's what we're all about today, leading with fun. So
it's actually exponential, so it's like 9 times the fun, but
very good.
Have we ever had any speakers in one go, Sam?
I'm sorry, have we ever had as many?
Yeah.
I think we usually have 2 and 3 is it's been a long time since we've had 3, but I'm sure it's all going to be good. So we usually have a method here, and just as we're getting started. But if to avoid talking over one another, I mean, a lot of times what I'll do is I'll go on mute and as one person talking, but then you'll see the mute sign come up. And so when you're ready to talk, you can take the mute off, and then we'll know that you have something to say. And that might be a way just to prevent us from talking over one another. But I'm sure it'll be a little bit clunky as we start, but that's all okay. It's all that's what editing is all about in podcasts, right? So anyway, let's just start. I mean, it was lovely to hear where everybody's from. And Brian, you mentioned that Denver. So are you out of the Denver area?
Yeah, I am in downtown Denver, right across the street from the Museum of Contemporary Art. So right now I'm actually looking outside and it's snowing, but the Museum of Contemporary Art has a great public sculpture outside that's a big heart with a sword through it. So I have great scenery right now.
That's a great place to live. What about you, Linda?
I am also in Denver, Colorado, not quite as central as Brian, live in the outer ring of Denver, but yeah, snowing today. And we just had our snowiest start to the year since 1965. So I'm ready for spring.
Nice. And Stu, where are you broadcasting from?
I am from Denver as well, actually Centennial, Colorado, so southern suburb of Denver, and also I'm looking out my window at the beautiful snowflakes. But grew up in Ohio, spent some time in Michigan and Texas as well, so got a little bit of a broader place background than just Denver here.
Perfect. Well, I don't know if everybody realized, but Jules is out of LA, and so I imagine it's nice and sunny over there.
Oh yeah, just that boring sunshine all the actually it's been a little chilly, but actually I was just in Ohio, speaking of Ohio, where it was snowing, and I had to learn how to scrape a car for the first time because all the ice was stuck, and all the people I was traveling with had a good laugh at that, the Australian trying to scrape snow off of a car, but we did it, we managed. So first time for everything, right?
Well, you've been scraping snow off of a car. That's the first time. Well,
so glamorous.
Yes.
I know for some people they're like, oh, this is like a regular thing. We grow up with it. But I was like, oh, okay. And towards the end, like once I got the hang of it, I'm like, this is actually kind of fun. Don't know if I could do it every winter, but for a visit or two.
And of course, we have Sumit out of India. And Sumit, I don't know if I've told you, my son is on a 2-month trek up in Nepal. So he's out there. He just flew out last week, so he's starting his trek. So he's going to be having a lot of fun doing that. I'm really jealous.
That should be fun. Yeah, there are lots of fantastic treks in Nepal, is what I hear.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. So being for all the Denver people up there, and I imagine getting up in the mountains is part of your pastime.
I think that's a given, but I think also it's the kind of thing when you live really close to something so fantastic, you have to make time to go. So that's my challenge.
Yeah, isn't it strange? I mean, there's people that live in these wonderful places, And every time I visit, you know, as a tourist to these wonderful places, I go, oh yeah, we went here and went there. It's like, oh geez, I haven't been there in 10 years or whatever. I mean, it just seems that you have a habit of not appreciating the places we're at sometimes. So I think that is an unfortunate trend.
Well, and I would say, talking about fun, I find, so I grew up in Montana, and, you know, it was a natural thing to always be in the mountains. And I always kind of considered myself more of an indoor enthusiast than really an outdoor enthusiast. But as I get older and, you know, now living in Colorado, I think I appreciate really the outdoors and really their contribution of like, just the kind of healthiness of like the physical healthiness, the like mental healthiness, and really then it's like contribution to like, you know, making things more fun, making me more fun. So I definitely appreciate living in Colorado because of that.
Yeah, we'll have to bring that up during the discussion here. We'll get started in about 1 minute from now. And as we get going, because I know there's a lot to talk about, but environment and the environment can be very purposeful and fun, right? Getting that exercise and so forth and moving around is quite important. So looking forward to talking more about that. So.
Yeah, I think that when you get out into nature, I don't know what it is, but you get so inspired. I think that's where creativity really comes from. A lot of people think, oh, if I sit in my bedroom, at my desk, at a computer, the ideas will flow. But sometimes you just got to get out into nature, you know, see some ducks in a pond, hike a mountain, things start to flow. It puts you in your creative state. I found like it just helps a lot with that. And yeah, nothing you can find just sitting in your bedroom. So just me.
Just the rabbit holes of the internet, right? Yeah. That's what you find.
Rabbit holes.
Rabbit holes are totally natural. It's okay.
I love it. All right. Well, I guess we'll get started here. We've just been chatting away. We have a few people logged in, and we'll just get started. We'll dive straight in because I know that there's so much to cover today. So everybody, welcome to the People Strategy Forum. My name is Jules and I help to host this forum, and I stay very active in the chat. So if you have any questions for any of our lovely speakers today, do put them in there and we'll make sure they get answered for you. And if you just have comments, feedback, you just want to be like, yeah, I agree with that, go ahead, do that. It lets us know we're on the right track. And even if you're tuning in from a platform outside of Zoom, maybe LinkedIn, Facebook, still put the questions in there. We love to hear them and we always make sure that they do get answered. And to give you a bit of an idea about the People Strategy Forum, if you're new here, what we try and do each and every week, we get together and our goal really is to engage and energize and elevate your employees and your company. So we do that by teaming up with some speakers, and today you get not one, not two, but three awesome speakers from a company called Farm-to-Spaceship. So I'll introduce them in just a second. Now you already see my picture on there. I'm Jules again, for anyone just jumping in. We normally have Shah here as well, and Howard. I'm not sure if they're hopping in today, but they are usually here with us. But we definitely have Sumit here. Good morning, Sumit. Sumit is a HR and talent management expert. He is based in India, but he works with companies on a global scale. So he's very limitless, working with companies all around the world, some of which have included Deloitte and Accenture. And we also have Sam. Sam brings us this forum each and every week. He's a compensation expert, and he is the founder and CEO of Comp Team. And they help implement successful compensation and talent management rewards programs into companies so that they can have a happier, more thriving workplace. So now that we've got our panel out the way, let's introduce you to our three fabulous guest speakers. We were just chatting it up before we went live, and they are all awesome. So much fun energy. I'm really excited. They're all creative, and they are all from a company called Farm-to-Spaceship. I'm like, don't say farm to table, Farm-to-Spaceship. And what they do is they create artist-driven experiences that are immersive. So it's super super cool. Things like turning people into joysticks, from what Brian told me earlier. So they do all sorts of cool things, starting with Linda. Now, Linda has a very rich background in entertainment. She did a lot of theater producing. She even has a background in comedy. And she had this light bulb moment where she realized, oh, I'm a creative, but I also have a business mind. So she merged those together. And now she's doing this experience design and merging those two talents together. We also have Brian Corrigan, who has a background in creative placemaking. He used to teach design. He's an artist and entrepreneur. And as you can see on his bio there as well, working at the intersection of creative economy, technology, and community development. And then we also have Stewart Meek. And now Stewart, he has more of a background in working with local governments, community development, and economic development. And as you can see, they all have their backgrounds. They're quite similar, but also a bit different. They all have their special talents and superpowers, but together they work together at Farm-to-Spaceship. And we were just saying that we can't do it all on our own. We don't have every single talent in the book. So it's great when we can come together, collaborate with people that have something that we don't. And that's what makes all the magic. So today's topic is leading with fun. Do we remember that word? I think it's been a while since we remembered what fun was, with everything going on in the world. So let's go back to leading with fun, having fun, and making the workplace a bit more fun. So welcome, Linda, Brian, and Stewart. We are very excited to have you here.
Thank you, everyone. So first of all, can we just get a little bit of background? I mean, how did you all find one another and start doing this, coming up with this wonderful company and the name and your purpose?
Well, I think although we had, sort of disparate backgrounds, there was so much that we had in common when you really start to look at it, that it was inevitable probably that we would connect. Just because I think all three of us are very intentionally leaning forward into this work and the sort of the edge of it. So when three people are kind of leaning in and who else do I need to know? Eventually you find each other. So I think in some ways it was just meant to happen.
I know, and go ahead, Brian.
Oh yeah, well, and I was just gonna say, I think as Linda was saying, it's just like, it's hard to find people who just purely love fun. So I think that also was one of those kind of attractors, because I know when I met Linda and Stu, I was like, oh, you guys are so fun. We have to stay friends. So, I think that probably was a little bit of a North Star too.
It's funny that, I mean, we all love fun, right? But for some reason we have a tendency to kind of lose some of that freedom, that natural energy that we have of children. It seems like when we witness other children, I mean, they're playing all the time. They're having fun. I mean, and of course, there's times when they're hungry, right? Or they need something, but of course, I mean, what causes that? Why is that a phenomenon? Why do we have the sense of or the feeling that we need to lose fun as we progress in our lives or we get in our professional lives? Have you explored that?
So I'd say one thing is that, I think our culture over time has sort of tricked us into thinking that fun is not productive. It's not a productive aim in and of itself. And that's just, you can just anecdotally, I think most folks would know if they sat and thought about it, that that's just not true. But the science also says it's not true as well. So we have that going for us. So yeah, I think it's up to all of us to push back against that, and fun is natural as well. So it's unnatural to push fun out of your life. So I think just allowing space for it to come back in is maybe a more relaxed way to kind of think about that.
Well, if you want to think about, you were talking about childhood and the difference, right? The conditions that we set for children, we set these conditions for them to have fun. I mean, just a simple example, a playground. What an invitation, right? So I think it's the fact that all of a sudden, as you grow older, you start to change your conditions so that fun is not as important as it used to be. So I think ultimately we can just change our conditions and probably have more fun.
Well, and I like to piggyback on the conditions. One of the things that I think a lot about is really like, so you think about organizations that have hierarchy or organizations that are a little bit more flat. I think the hierarchy really creates the conditions to not have fun because it's right. It's so much top down type of stuff where the conditions of a more flat organization, like inherently in order to have fun, there's a commitment to the other person, right? Like there's a building of a relationship. There's a getting to know the person because you need all of that information in order to have fun with them. You have to, and then you also have to build the trust with them. So I think just again, kind of thinking about structure, right? And those conditions, it's like, how are we really kind of creating like organizations or places that, again, either inhibit it or really amplify it?
So is this environmental? I mean, you're talking about a lot of environmental conditions and setting the stage for fun, right? When we're in a situation right now where, let's just look at the past 10 years. I mean, there's been a real focus on employees and creating spaces for them to have fun and collaboration and so forth, and at the workplace. And in the past 3 years now, we've been at home in our own spaces, and somewhat isolated over time, and we've had to develop new ways of really having fun in the office. I don't know if anybody's really solved this equation, but how do we have fun in a remote environment?
Well, I think really fun is so simplified if you just think of it as delight or surprise. We interpret surprise in a familiar context as fun. And so it can be really simple things, just something that a little bit out of the ordinary in the right context is fun. And so I think people often think that fun is this really high bar, and it's got to be something spectacular. And it can be as simple as showing up to your Zoom meeting with a funny hat on and not explaining yourself.
What are some other things that companies can think about as far as of bringing that cohesiveness or collaboration in a remote environment? I mean, of course, doing something out of the ordinary, can bring that atmosphere, or learning or wearing, clothing that is more inspiring and different things like this. But is there a way to drive this in a more like a purposeful element as far as creating environments or for creativity and ingenuity?
So one thing that I've always kind of thought was like crazy is just the fact that a lot of times I think that we look for permission for fun. And I see this a lot, like me working in the public realm. It's like, okay, the public realm is actually all of our spaces, but like there's like this kind of like, I need permission in order to kind of be myself or do these things. And I think it's also like transfers over to really kind of the workplace of that. We're looking for these permissions to kind of be ourselves. And I think, again, like something that we always kind of talk about is really, again, and Stu mentioned, is that, why is like fun, like really kind of associated with not being serious, right? And that when we kind of go into the office or, into our workspaces, like we have to be professional, right? And that then translate to being serious, which like fun, I feel, is like the opposite of that. So I think it really kind of maybe just starts with like, again, an easy one of just like permission. We have permission to really kind of, show up with that funny hat, and like we're encouraged to do that.
Yeah, I think, but there might be a lot of things that are driven by fear, right? And maybe that's an organizational problem. Like if I show up with that funny hat or with the inspiring clothes, am I going to be taken seriously? Am I going to, if I say this or that, am I going to offend someone? If something's taken out of context, am I going to harm psychological safety in the organization? I mean, how do we create these environments of safety to where fun can take place and happen?
So I was just going to build off of what both about that question and both what Brian was saying there too. So for me, I think it calls out the importance of leaders in organizations to model these conditions and show that it's okay. But the fear point, I think, is really interesting. To me, it feels like sort of any anxiety that anyone has on any number of topics, you just need to find like that 1% kind of toe into it and realize the world didn't come crashing down and you didn't lose your job because you had a little bit of fun. And then just keep snowballing that. So leaders are so important, but I think everyone can help shift that culture a little bit by injecting their bit of fun and their bit of personality in it, into the workplace, into the Zoom meetings. And I think 90% of the time, or 98% of the time, the opposite of what people expect to happen will happen. Like it's not going to be silence, it's going to be everybody laughing, and then you have to figure out how to transition away from not away from fun, but like how to get into a place where you're having the meeting in a different way. Like it's going to happen so naturally for people. You just need somebody that's willing to take that kind of first step, that toe dip into the water.
So really being driven by leadership to setting an example of that safe place and inspiring fun and showing that it's completely acceptable in the workplace. Now, Sumit, I'd love to hear from you as far as thinking about multicultural elements and I mean, as far as I know you've worked with many different cultures and often in the same room. Have you seen complication or issues that arise from just trying to have a psychological safe atmosphere and inspiring fun?
I think we're really bad at having fun in this part of the world. So fun and work are very, very distinct entities. And if you even mention that you're having fun at work, that clearly means you don't have enough work to do. And therefore, a lot of people in this part of the world, they would actually not be very comfortable with somebody from the West, let's say, cracking a joke or pulling funny faces or talking in a particular way. And you're expected to, I mean, if one were to do that, one could expect being pulled up by somebody senior saying, why exactly were you acting unprofessional on that in that meeting? So there are, I mean, HR functions have started trying to create those pockets of fun, but it's still considered to be separate from work. So yeah, you could go out for a paintball session, but then joking around at work and in general, just having fun, it still is kind of looked down upon in some of the more traditional companies. Of course, many of the companies here are American subsidiaries, or they've got a distinctly Western culture, and the scenario is different there, of course.
It is oh, go ahead, Stu.
I was just going to say that seeded a thought for me, and it goes back to what Linda was talking about earlier, and like, what is the definition of fun? Like, how do we describe it? So what I was thinking there is that, we've talked a little bit about like the silly hats and jokes and stuff like that, but fun is so creative as well. Like, I think it could just be having conversations about things you're working on in an unexpected and different way. It doesn't have to be silly. It can still be fun to be working on things in a more creative way rather than a more prescriptive kind of way.
I want to piggyback on that, because a word that Stu used, I think, is important, is the unexpected. And that is, it goes back to that surprise. Just a moment of unexpectedness can be interpreted as a different condition. And also I think when, fun, I think fun comes sort of preloaded. People think fun is a certain thing. But I think in an environment where, or the condition that fun is okay, it raises a veil between two people. And all of a sudden, if someone is in a real genuine moment, or they surprise or delight me, I feel like they see me. Like, oh, now you see, oh, we're people. Oh, okay, I get it, we're people. And I think that relational piece is really one of the things you're aiming at when you introduce the conditions for fun.
And I think to just like piggyback on that, to bring it into like kind of maybe a more macro like level of like, well, why, you know? And I think it's like I think again about, you know, companies trying to achieve innovation or creativity or whatever, right? And so when we look at really kind of the emotional side, right, of like what we were talking about earlier around fear. So your brain, right, when you're in that fear mode, it's like looking through a straw. Now, I don't know about everyone else here, but if I'm trying to solve a really big problem, I don't want to be looking through a straw at that problem. I want to have a 360, you know, kind of viewpoint of what I'm working on. And that's what fun does. That's what fun and play does, is that it relaxes your brain and you're able to really see everything, where then that allows you to understand like where the common denominators are on things that may seem like they're not even connected. And then you connect those dots, and that's really kind of, again, like really where innovation and creativity come from, right? And so again, kind of bringing it back, like that's the importance of like why we need to really kind of have more fun environments.
So I think that's a really important one of the pieces that I want to discover here are, what are the triggers of allowing fun to happen? Like, for instance, what it could be, there's things that I think that there's a lot of triggers that we're aware of where fun is inhibited, right? Such as, okay, we're in a peer group of people, we're all talking, and then all of a sudden the big boss comes by, and we're all like, oh my gosh, you know, and we have to like, oh, okay, we have to be professional now, and so we get scared. Other situations where, you know, it's somebody introduces a very serious topic and that we have to cover. Of course, that and then we're all saying, okay, this is serious. We need to. I mean, and it can be very hurtful, you know, like what's going on in the world today, war or disease and so forth. But there's a time where we need to get back to that fun place. And I also understand that fun is not necessarily a place we have to. It's not like saying, okay, we need to have fun now. It's those little pieces that, you know, how can we have a more inspiring workplace where fun naturally happens? And so when I talk about those triggers, I mean, does that come into mind? Is there certain formulas that companies or leaders can take in as far as having certain group sizes, you know, introducing colors, you know, and materials that are more inspiring? I mean, is there some triggers that our listeners can you know, take in as good guidance?
Well, I think one thing that's really important is an environment that is co-created. There's not the top-down kind of, this is how it's going to be. It's instead of like, this is how it is, this is how it is, start asking the question of, who are we together? Who are we now that you're here? And I think just that openness, a little bit, maybe vulnerability would be a word some people would use, acknowledging that everyone is contributing to this. And once everybody's fingerprints are on it, which a fingerprint is a great word that Brian has taught me, once everybody's fingerprints are on the environment, then they have ownership, they have buy-in, and they're part of it. And I think that that could be a thing. Like if you drop in a ping pong table in the middle of your conference room, that's kind of prescribed fun, as opposed to saying, well, how are we fun when we're together? So I think it's relational.
So go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, I agree. I think also like this is like where like the placemaking side of like my brain goes to, right? It's like, okay, when you're working within a community, it's like, sure, you could go ahead and like beautify the area, which could be like changing the color of something or painting something, right? And like that definitely makes things appear more fun or more beautiful. But like, again, if people aren't bought into it, if like, as Linda was saying, if their fingerprint is not on it, like how then do people really start to love the thing? And, you know, again, I think that like loving where you're at and feeling comfortable where you're at, feeling like you belong there, those are all part of the conditions for allowing for fun to actually even occur, right? And so I agree. I think that this is really a cultural thing, and there's no one size fits all, right? The only thing that I would say is probably consistent is that you work together to figure it out.
So it seems to be the first piece is really getting to know the people around you and having that understanding. Stu, I'm sorry, were you going to say something?
You were taking me in a similar direction too. So I think one thing that's important in terms of conditions is having unprogrammed time. If you think, and it, like what Linda was talking about, I think is just so important. Is about relationships, and fun is a social activity. So the more you program what's happening in like agendas or meetings, things like that. If you're not programming in a way to be sensitive to your programming as an obstacle, it's just, I think, best to have some time that's unprogrammed, and the fun will happen if you just allow for it to happen. You just think about like the social aspect of it. How, like, when in your workplace do you make friends? Like, when do you feel a connection and a relationship building? It's probably not in the middle of one topical thing that's on your agenda that you're talking about. It's in the 5 minutes before you start the meeting where there is no agenda yet, right? We're just sitting here having an experience together. So I think that unprogrammed aspect of it is important to be aware of too.
So allowing time to connect with one another before the work needs to get done, having those moments are important. Now, Jules, I would love to hear your perspective, because one thing that I don't know is it instills fear in me is if I had to go in front of a bunch of people and pretend I'm something else, like an actress, or like you do acting, of course. And I would love to hear on how you break down those barriers quickly when you go on to a brand new set with people that you don't know, and everybody has these high expectations of you, of, oh, she's going to get this right the first time, and all this kind of stuff. I mean, how do you break that barrier and into an avenue where you feel safe and you can have fun?
Well, I try not to put so much pressure on myself, because I think growing up, I was always like, everything has to be perfection, like my perfectionism. I'm a recovering perfectionist, because that is not a productive way to live. So if you're out there, like everything has to be right all the time, like it just doesn't help you in any way. And the thing with like going on a set, yeah, it is very intimidating, because it's like so many crew, cast members, everyone's busy running around, like they don't really have time to hold your hand. You kind of just need to figure it out kind of for yourself. And so yeah, it can be a little like nerve-wracking, because not only do you have to know your lines and your movements and your blocking, and find where you have to even be like until they call you up. Like there's a lot of things happening. For me, meditation keeps me very grounded. I know that's not really fun, but it helps me get in the right headspace so that I can actually go onto a set and already be in that relaxed state, that kind of flowy state, which actually opens me up a little to new people. Because I feel like if I just, I'm rushing through traffic and I'm already stressed about parking, or someone cut me off, or like other external factors are bothering me, I feel like if I've already taken that time for myself in the morning, I'm already like, okay, man, like that's cool. Like, okay, like I'm flowy, I'm more open to people. And I think when you're open, you know, you've got to find what makes you open up, whether it's meditation, a workout. Like, I think you need to do something for yourself, because it just helps you approach people better. That's what I find anyway. I'm more like, just, yeah, open, receptive. I want to engage in conversation with people more, ask them questions, find out more about them, because I'm just in that elevated state. So I find that always really helps when I'm going into a, you know, new environment, because I'm not the best with new people. Sometimes I do get that anxiety. It might not seem like it, but I'm like, oh, okay, like, you know, there's so many people, it's overwhelming, there's so many things. So I find that getting into that state. But yeah, there's other things that I do just on my own. Like if I, you know, I work from home a lot as well, and you get stuck in that rut and you're like, oh, no new ideas are flowing to me. I do a couple of things. Sometimes I'll do like what I call stupid idea time, where I'm like, if I had all the money in the world and no worries, no bills, what would I do? And I just like, you know, get into, just set a timer for 5 minutes, and I just write and write, and it gets me into that flow state, and things start to expand. And I come out of it feeling so different. I really recommend it for anyone that's never tried it, because it's stupid idea time. So it could be as crazy as, I don't know, getting on the rocket ship with Elon and having cocktails on the moon, like anything, because it just gets you in that creative flow state, I find. And then you know, you can tackle on other things from there. So there's a couple of things that I do.
That's great. That's great. Yeah. And I mean, and so preparation ahead of time, I mean, making sure that you're moving around, getting your blood flowing, and putting yourself in that state through meditation and those creative processes, that creating the mindset, right? I think that's excellent feedback. You know, which reminds me, but another piece of connectivity I was thinking about in the context of acting as well, as I was listening to the Armchair podcast with, you know, Dax Shepard, the actor, and he was talking about the connection that happens between the camera person and the actor at times, because of the eye contact. I mean, this person is like filming you, right? And they got that eye contact right all the time, and it seems to break down those barriers. And I often think about what happens in boardrooms and meetings at times, or even when we're on Zoom meetings, that sometimes we find people that suddenly they're looking at their phone, or they're losing that connection and that eye contact. And I think that has ways of deteriorating the situation. What are your thoughts, Brian?
Well, you know, one thing that I was just kind of thinking here about, like what we've been talking about, is really, and we kind of touched on this a little earlier, like with the ping pong table, but like really kind of the difference between like the process and the product, or like the tool, which I'd say the product would be like that ping pong table, right? Like that's the tool for you to like have fun. But as we've been talking about, it's like, it's the process, right? The process is where actually the fun and the connection and all of the good stuff happens. And like, I was just kind of thinking about like this idea of, okay, so think about sometimes people are like, okay, well, we're going to rename the boardroom to, you know, the fun room. And it's like, you know, sometimes as like someone who works there, you're like, that is so stinking cheesy. Like, oh my gosh, like I like am not going to subscribe to that, right? However, if there was a process where everyone decided to call it the fun room, it's a different kind of thing, because now all of a sudden, like you help co-create that, right? And so I think like, again, that just kind of starts to, I think to me, like illustrate like the importance of the process of really kind of, again, bringing people into it versus just like buying it or labeling it, right? Because that's a very much more, I think, like that's what we all want to do. We just want to like buy something, and then all of a sudden it's like, okay, it's done, perfect, check, right? But again, it's like the whole thing about this is that process is so important, and like that's also where like all the trust and all of the other good stuff comes from. So it's like, don't really leave the process out just because it's easier to like get the product.
I wanted to add something to that. That also speaks to Jewel, what you were saying about you said something about meditating, and you said that's not really fun. That was a little comment you made, and I thought that we need to mention the fact that there are different kinds of fun. I think the people come with a definition of fun, and it often is over on the funny side. Fun is funny, and fun creates laughter. And I think it's a sort of a childlike perspective on what fun is. One of the benefits is as we mature, maybe it becomes harder to make fun, the conditions for fun in our lives, but we also get a richer definition of what fun is. Fun is a lot more things than screaming around on the playground, right? It can be flow state, like you were talking about. It can be relational, like what Brian was just saying, like group things that, we like building a brick wall, maybe that's a lot of work in your backyard, but it can also be fun when you're at the right age with the right maturity and the right life view.
And to piggyback off of that too, is it's just like also our memory of it. And so like part of the richness of that fun was like, think about when you were in a really trying situation, right? Or like something that was actually even kind of dangerous, right? Like, let's say that you're out on a hike and you get lost, right? And you're scared, like all the things, but then you find your way back, and then a week later, you're remembering it, or you're talking about it with the person that you were lost with. And all of a sudden, like, that then turns into fun, right? Like you remember that as like a fun thing, right? And so I think it's also kind of like a time, place, memory type of aspect to really kind of what fun is.
Those are great points. And so and so we're looking at this in a work context. I mean, knowing that there's fun has a lot of different definitions. It's really enjoyment and collaboration and sharing and relating to others. When you go into organizations and you try to to help them create an atmosphere for fun, or an event that is inspiring and fun, what are the first steps that you think about when you're engaging with a firm or an organization?
I think it goes back to conditions on a really basic level. We ask them, like if they want to make a particular thing more fun, how can you change the conditions of the place? How could you change the conditions of the timing? How can you change the conditions? Well, think of all the senses, right? The touch, the feel, the smell. Like we're people. We are people shaped. So I think making experiences people shaped, where all of the senses are considered, that's just this really simple thing. And when you ask somebody, very simple, like how can we make the staff meeting more fun? Well, think about, can you change the place? Maybe. Could you change the time of day? Could you change the taste? Donuts, right? How many times you showed up to a meeting and like the smallest thing, it was just donuts, but it like changed the conditions. So I think that's what we look at. What else, Brian and Stu?
I think one thing we've been talking about, especially more lately, is trying to think about what is the transformation that you want to see happen in the people that are there. So what's the emotional transformation, or what's the mental kind of obstacle you're trying to turn into an opportunity? Like just sort of being purposeful about that, I think is important as well.
I guess the only thing that I would add to is like, fun is a team sport, right? And so we have to do it together. And so I think just as Linda was saying, like creating the conditions and the opportunity for us to come together to co-create what those kind of fun transformational moments can be. But I think also kind of like one of that like happy like side effects of that is that as we're doing that, we're building trust with each other. And so when you think about when you do have those hard times, which of course, like, we live in reality, which that's just very much a part of reality, is that I kind of think of fun as like, it's like depositing money in your like fun bank account, right? And so when you do have those like really tough times, like you can withdraw, right? And as long as you're keeping a positive balance, like everything is good. It's when it gets into the red that it's not so good. But like, I don't know, I kind of think about just even for my own like kind of personal relationships. It's like, yeah, I might have a fight with someone or whatever and like maybe not agree. But the minute that then we can spark the fun again, I'm always kind of like, what were we even fighting about? Like, what was that about? Like, you know, it's like I kind of forget it all. It just like erases it, you know. So I think like again, that's just kind of the benefit of doing this work.
So that's and so one thing that I want to build on is you mentioned that the bank for creating fun and it sounds like for us to ensure that we have significant deposits in the bank, we need to take a purposeful approach to ensuring that we're saving or we're creating that wealth of fun in the workplace. And so should leaders be thinking of this as a consciously and how should is there measuring sticks on how they can do this? I mean, what are the things that are, how should we be thinking of this as leaders to improve that bank of fun?
Well, I want to just touch on the measurement piece really quick. So one of the cool things that we've been exploring is we've been working with, his name is Theo Edmonds, and he works at the CU Denver, which is the University of Colorado at Denver. So Theo's doing some really groundbreaking research on really kind of creativity and cultural well-being, and it's being measured through hope, trust, and belonging. And so we're really having like these conversations around, again, like fun is the gateway into hope, trust, and belonging. And so, you know, again, it's like we're in this like really amazing time where we're actually now starting to be able to kind of put metrics around this work. So we can actually have that measuring stick to see, okay, is it working or is it not working? It's not just like, you know, kind of totally just throwing things at the wall and hoping that they stick or just doing it because it feels good. Like, yeah, we can actually kind of like see what the ROI is and actually start measuring this.
Another thought I had was that that's something that's important to us when we think about engaging with an organization is how can we show instead of telling? So we were immediately thinking about what are some unexpected things that we can do right out of the gate for anybody that we're working with. And I think that's another sort of purposeful thing that any person in any organization, but especially leadership, can think about is just as you think about the conditions, how can you do something unexpected and show what you're trying to get at rather than trying to talk about anything you're going to do. Just act is so important.
Agreed. So I was thinking of fun in the context of, let's say, a toddler. So one would assume that for a toddler, an activity like, say, coloring a sheet would be a lot of fun. But try telling the toddler they only have to sit in a particular place. They're only allowed to use the color red, and they have to color precisely what you want, and then see if they're having fun. So I think one of the reasons why as adults we don't have fun is because there are way too many constraints. The moment you build in empowerment, and I'd like to quote Mark Twain here, he said, work is what you're obliged to do, play is whatever you're not obliged to do. And this is in the context of Tom Sawyer, who makes painting the fence a lot of fun. So if you've read the story, his aunt tries to punish him by saying you got to paint the fence, son, and he kind of turns it into a voluntary activity where friends come by, they initially laugh at him saying, oh, we're playing, you're painting the fence, and he's like, no, this is a lot of fun, would you like to try it? And then everybody has fun painting the fence. So I think that's a good lesson for us adults to learn from there, that as a leader, the moment you start empowering people, the moment you start giving them more control over what they're trying to do, they will start having more fun. And you put decisions in their hands and say that, of course, you can nudge them into a particular direction, but command and control is the easiest way to completely suck up all the fun from the workplace. That's what I was thinking of while listening to you.
Yeah, I think that's a great point, and to me, it connects to the importance of having a shared future for the organization, the importance of knowing everybody understanding what the purpose is, and that kind of shared focus. It alleviates so much of the prescriptiveness that you were just talking about, and gives a little bit more space for that creativity and fun to happen.
I think that can also be at first a scary space for a traditional leader to step into, because it is super safe, easy, predictable to lead in a certain way. And when you open up to other people's input, it can get complicated, but it's stronger. What you're creating is a stronger infrastructure. Even though it might, it feels less in control, it's actually more solid.
You know, one thing that I think is really interesting on what Sumit just said is something that I actually have experienced now with a lot of my clients. I find that some of my more agile technology clients that are moving quickly, and some of the things that they're doing is messy, and they come together and maybe they're not looking 100% professional, or they haven't combed their hair that day. I always have the sense that they're having more fun in their work, and when we talk, it's more purposeful. And then I've been in other environments where things are very buttoned up. There's significant standards to always, to have the presentation. Every meeting, they have a presentation they bring up with those beautiful graphic slides that they've spent way too much time building and so forth. And there seems to be so much pressure on everyone, and because of these requirements, that limits the amount of fun. So I think that Sumit's hit on something specific there, is taking away too much of the autonomy, and having too high of standards around just getting things done on a regular basis can be a real drag on the process. So good points there, Sumit. So as we're thinking about things and creating these, well, I have one thing I want to bridge on as we're getting towards the top of the hour is fun and crisis and seriousness, because what we're experiencing right now in the world is not fun in a lot of situations, and we're seeing inflation going up, gas at the pump, and crisis in the Ukraine, and we're just got out of this long period of COVID, and everything seems so hurtful and bleak. What can we do in situations like this to continue moving forward in the organization, to continue inspiring our people? And is there things that we can do to ensure that withdrawal from the fund bank isn't so extreme? What are your thoughts?
Well, I would say just in general, all the stuff we're talking about, this is all about social cohesion. This is all about relationship, and that, keep your eye on that prize, because that is really the antithesis to all of the things that you just mentioned. It's the weakness in our bonds right now that's at the core of a lot of these things. And so I know it's hard to take the long view and the big picture. Sometimes you want to just have a really acute action, but the long view and the big picture is what we have right now to get to a better place.
Good points. And so in other words, fun is not about being trapped, right? Fun is about when we feel like we're trapped, or we can do nothing, that strips fun away. But when we build relationships with others, when we join arms and we're moving towards a common cause, or given an avenue to where we're not trapped, such as what can we do to help the people in Ukraine, or those people that are suffering? What can we do to help people recover from COVID, or those going through tough in times in cancer? Or what can we do if there is a diversity or injustice that is happening? What can we do as a group, as a, you know, to inspire? Is that a way that we can inspire more fun and get out of that trap?
Yeah, I think Linda is absolutely right, and I appreciate this question being asked, because I feel like it's one of those things that really pull Linda, Brian, and I towards this work. It's the one of the things that we feel like a real sense of purpose around, and where we can be adding to the world is helping to build that social connection and those social cohesion, the relationships, and be thinking about that kind of purposefully. And then I lost my other thoughts, so I'll come back in a second.
Well, you know, I think like with this, like, again, kind of going back to working in the public realm. And, you know, I think like one of the challenges that you face when you're working in the public realm is that most everyone is a stranger to each other. And so like when you kind of think about like that, like emotional kind of headspace that you're in when you're around strangers, it's a little bit more like looking through that straw, right? And I kind of think about and here I am talking about this, and I find myself doing it all the time, and I'm always like, why are you doing this? And I think it's just like a natural, like, it's just a natural state, right? Like that's kind of wired like that as humans. And, you know, when I'm on the street and I have like a stranger approach me, I'm always like, what do you want? You know, like, why are you talking to me? It's very close-minded, you know, and I think like that kind of is at the root of like what we're talking about here in terms of the social cohesion, is that it comes from a questioning place, a fearful place, right? Of like, ooh, who are you? Like, you know, what's going on here? It's never from like, you know, I think for me, it's not from that curious place of like, ooh, like, you know, like, who are you? Like, what do we have in common? Like all of that, right? And so I think like this is where the fun and really like the playfulness really is like the superpower, because, and I've witnessed it really on the street over and over and over again. It's like when you're able to really kind of break down those barriers through fun and play, you can now share that you have a shared moment, which then creates a bond, which then allows for the openness of like, hey, what's your name? Like, where did you come from? Where do you live? Like, just all of those really kind of basic kind of things, right? Of just kind of building bonds. And so, you know, I would go as far to say is that like fun is probably our secret weapon, you know, towards all of this other stuff.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And I think we should also try to identify what the opportunities are in crises like that, and try to be thinking about how we can lean into those opportunities and focus on those things, which I think, Sam, is what you were kind of getting to a little bit there. Finding purpose in the suffering, or finding purpose in the challenge and the obstacle, I think helps a lot. And I think another thing is gratitude. And especially if it's shared, right? Showing what you're grateful for and sharing that with other people both builds the relationship and refocuses you on the things that you have, and gets you in that kind of mindset to do what Brian was saying, and find those secret weapons that reconnect you to the things that you care about, and reconnect you to other people, and find the path to do good things and be that positive influence on others.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Stu. So we are coming towards the top of the hour, so I do want to acknowledge our sponsor here, which is the TMA method. And so the TMA method is one of those tools that we use to get to know people better. It's an assessment that we can provide to our colleagues and even candidates that are coming into the organization. that's based on positive psychology. So there's nothing negative about it. It's more about, really getting to know one another, understanding what a person's talents and their drives are, what they really want in their career, and how they like to be interacted with. And so it's a great communication tool. And so we talk about this a lot on this this forum. And so if anybody's interested in learning more about the TMA method, please reach out to me. I'm happy to give you an assessment and we can talk through that. In addition, I'd like to acknowledge our speaker for next week. We're going to have Gail join us on harnessing the true value of your culture. And we've been talking a lot about, creating safe places, having fun in the workplace. And also there's those cultures that we have in the workplace of, it could be something that is very purposeful, as a culture of innovation, or a culture of recognition, or it can be a lot of different things. So Gail's going to talk to us about how to harness the true nature of what we stand for as an organization. So I look forward to that discussion next week. So as we wrap up here, Jules, do we have any questions that came up or some interesting dialogue on the chat?
Well, Sumit threw a good one in, talking about leaders. Do you think leaders should be able to identify what's fun for each person in their team and align accordingly? Because one person's fun could be another's kryptonite, kind of like getting a quarterback to play defense instead.
I love that, because it is all about the fingerprints, right? And I saw one of your comments, Sumit, about the creating slides. And my sort of secret, my secret that I don't tell anybody, is that when I really want to relax and like just decompress from a long day of creativity and thinking and big ideas, I love to do a spreadsheet. It's the thing. It just brings me so much peace, and I can't explain it.
I can totally relate to that. So there are times when I just look at a news report or a research piece, and I want to turn it into a slide and say that if I were to explain it to say a 6-year-old, how would I do it? That's fun.
Yes, and that's a great point too. I mean, those elements that bring us satisfaction are how we decouple from a tough day. Drawing a picture, singing a song, those things that bring happiness to our lives, that allow us to make that separation from that difficult part that we were once engaged into a new reality of how we're going to move forward and how to change our mindset, right? So I think that's just like Jules was saying. It's it can be something as engaging in something that transitions the mind and gets you prepared for that next stage. So, well, great. I mean, such a
connection. Sumit and Linda have that connection there, and we've been talking about connecting with each other and making each other feel seen, and that's what it's all about. Like, and it just elevates that energy with something so simple. Like, so it doesn't have to be like, oh, I'm so fun. Look at me, I'm so fun. It's like something as simple as that. You're like, oh, now we're like, do we just become best friends? We love spreadsheets. It's like. So I know I saw the moment there. I enjoyed it from from the outsider's perspective, watching.
Well, great. So as we're at the top of the hour now, I would just love to hear from Farm-to-Spaceship on how our listeners can engage with you. How can they learn more about what you do to help organizations? What is the best way to contact you and learn more?
I think it's a very memorable name, Farm-to-Spaceship. So probably the easiest way is email Brian at Farm-to-Spaceship, Linda at Farm-to-Spaceship, Stu at Farm-to-Spaceship. That's the red hot, that's the hotline, the red phone on the desk.
That's great. Well, thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure having this conversation today. So I really enjoyed all of everybody sharing their wisdom, and I just hope you have a wonderful week ahead, and join us again here, all our listeners on the People Strategy Forum. We'll see you next week. Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Yeah.
Bye, everyone.
Fun this week.